Other than, perhaps, the great tors which top the hills, Dartmoor's most famous features are its bogs. And one of them in particular has a reputation for danger: Foxtor Mire. Right, today I'm heading out to Foxtor Mire, which famously was the inspiration for Great Grimpen Mire in the Hound of the Baskervilles. Yes, everyone knows that, past George. We're having no Hound of the Baskervilles chat today. That's surely a subject for a whole other episode. That said, Arthur Conan Doyle definitely has a part in Foxtor Mire's notoriety, and past George wanted to see what all the fuss was about. How difficult would it actually be for an experienced moorwalker to cross the mire? Are they really the barren and mournful death traps portrayed in fiction? Or are mires misunderstood? Let's find out, perhaps the hard way. Welcome back to the Dartmoor Podcast. Stories of the dangerous nature of Dartmoor's bogs didn't begin with the Hound of the Baskervilles. Pretty much on page 1 of the Reverend Sabin Baring Gould's Book of Dartmoor, he relates this old legend. A man is said to have been making his way through Orne Mire when he came on a top hat reposing brim downwards on the sedge. He gave it a kick, whereupon a voice called out from beneath, "What you be a-doing to my hat?" The man replied, "Be there ne'er a chap under un?" "He's, I reckon," was the reply, "and a hoss under me likewise." But in my research, I couldn't find a single confirmed historical example of someone actually dying in a Dartmoor bog. Plenty of people falling in and getting muddy and miserable, but all being able to extricate themselves or be rescued. The question is then, how difficult is it to cross Foxtor Mires? So on the map, there's a path, but it's one of those suspicious, very straight line, green dotted line paths, which sometimes mean there should be a path here. I'm not sure what they mean really. So that should be interesting. There's been lots of rain, so it should be properly boggy. And maybe I can give you some tips on how to navigate safely in a bog. Oh, please don't say that. Yeah, it's pretty hubristic, actually, isn't it? But I do consider myself one of Britain's, if not Europe's, finest bog hoppers. He's going to die, isn't he? At this point, I'm using the words bog and mire interchangeably, but there's a technical difference. Mire's at the bottom of the hill, bogs on the top. The important feature of both is that their waterlogged nature is entirely due to rainwater rather than being fed by another water source. This results in the soil being more acidic than other damp places like swamps and marshes. And Dartmoor has plenty of rain, an average of almost 200 days in the year being marred by some sort of precipitation. And to compound the sogginess, the granite bedrock beneath the surface means that water can never completely drain away. This acidic and waterlogged environment is hostile to life. Well, most life. One plant in particular loves it, and it's an essential ingredient of what makes a mire: sphagnum moss. This remarkable plant can hold 10 times its own weight in water, a living sponge. By trapping all this rainwater, sphagnum moss is an integral part of bog building. But it isn't the only ingredient. The moss combines with some other hardy acid-loving plants like Molinia, rushes and bog cotton. First bog hopping tip is, you see the white dots? That is the cotton, bog cotton. So that shows that it's a swampy area, so you want to stay away from the little white fluffs. So weirdly, a sort of basic knowledge of botany
can help you get through a bog unscathed.
Good advice, Past George. Maybe you will survive after all.
Okay, yeah, just looking at the map, and that's probably just standard good advice really, isn't it? But especially when going across the bog, so just know where you're going. So yeah, I'm going to be following this supposed path across, but I have just been able to see Child's Tomb through my binoculars, so I've got a really good idea of keeping that on that side, not going up this river valley, and you know, I'll be able to know there's a valley there even if the mist came in, so I know I'm crossing at like a right angle and then heading that direction. I'll have my compass with me. I definitely wouldn't go into a bog without a compass. Yeah, you definitely want a compass, because the way you navigate, you're having to like take little detours and things, and if it was low visibility and you couldn't see where you were going, it's quite easy to get spun around. I don't know if you can see down there the little white flowers. There are patches of those bog cotton tufts, so those would be the first places I try and stay away from. Another good tip, although somewhat more esoteric, if you believe in that sort of thing, might be a good time to get on the good side of the pixies before you go into the bog. So, and a hawthorn tree here, obviously a pixie portal to a parallel dimension. So I just say, it's alright pixies, I see you. We're not enemies. Don't take the mickey. Maybe you could give them a gift or something. If I could be bothered to get my sandwich out, I could give them a bit of bread. On the way back, if I make it back safely, I'll give you some bread. There you go. I'll eat it all.
Over the years, generations of moss and grasses grow and die and rot down to create the distinctive dark peat that is the other defining feature of Dartmoor's bogs. Peat can consist of up to 90% water, so unlike normal mud, which you can walk on, it forms a soggy slurry that the unwary can sink into.
I'm coming down to a proper stream. I know it's going to be very boggy down around the stream because water runs down the hill. And that's not actually a stupid thing to say as you'd think, because later I'm hoping to go up onto the tops, and there are bogs at the tops of hills on Dartmoor as well. Not content with just flooding all the bottoms of the valleys, they're actually on top of the hills as well, sometimes even on the side of the hill, which should be impossible, right? The water should drain. Anyway, let's deal with the Valley Mire first. Foxtor. The Great Grimpen Mire.
He's talking confidently, but Past George was feeling a bit of trepidation here. Largely because he knew he'd have to delete all the embarrassing footage of him being overconfident if he fell in a bog. But also because the scale of the damp valley was quite daunting. Victorian writer Eden Philpotts gives this rather beautiful description. This huge cup of jade exhibits scooped sides fretted with granite. Herein can a whole thunderstorm expend itself, or both foundations of a rainbow foot. Mists wander over its streamlets and break in waves of colourless light upon its sides. Lovely stuff. Especially streamlets. I like streamlets, I'm going to use that. No more procrastinating by exploring white works. It was time for Past George to fill his boots, either figuratively or literally.
Right, finally, let's cross Foxtor Mire. There's a path, a good thing. There's that combination of bright green moss and little cottontails. It's sinking in.
But why isn't he sinking into the sludge and leaving us with a sorry sight like this? Well, the roots of the living plants in the mire tangle together, forming a dense carpet over the top of the peat. This creates what we call a blanket bog. You can see here in this dried out section of damaged peat how this thick mat, perfectly capable of supporting your weight, floats above the liquid layer. The danger comes where this layer is younger or thinner, and you can break through into the deep dark gloop below. Here Past George demonstrates how to avoid this with the combination of a pokey stick and the knowledge of which tufts will support his weight.
Ripples you walk across it. It's a very thick skin of roots. And then more underneath, but actually push as hard as I can here, it's not going through any deeper than that. So it sort of feels scary, but as of yet there's not actually deep bogs to contend with. Sorry sheeps.
Finding it all a bit too easy though, he decided to go off track a bit to find a good example of blanket bog for you.
It feels very, very weird for me walking actively towards what I know is going to be like the boggiest bit. It just feels like I keep like veering off to go around, but I'm actually meant to be going into that.
There in the middle of Foxtor Mire, among the whispering susurrus of bog cotton, there was a peaceful and ethereal beauty. I love making this podcast. So many strange and magical moments I wouldn't have experienced otherwise.
Gotta go steady. Look at that hole. Just the perfect size for my stick there. Probably shouldn't do it, it might be the reset button. Actually struggling to find, you know, boggy bits. Doesn't seem like a good sign, does it? I'm sort of like subconsciously avoiding them. It's like my instinct to not go to boggy bits. Yeah, see, this looks like it could be boggy. It's the sphagnum moss. But it's not. Not really. Maybe this is how it gets you. Maybe it sort of insidiously lures you in, thinking, oh, it's not too bad, but it's actually slowly getting boggier and boggier. until you realise you're bitten off more than you can chew. And suddenly I am in a bog. I can feel it really soft under my feet. Annoyingly, I don't think I can really film it. It's just underneath a load of manky grass. The sensation is quite like a very soft carpet, and you feel it move. Flower there, is that a marsh violet? Where I am now is very hard to go further. I might even stop and find another route because it's wet and it's deep holes everywhere. Very hard to see where you're going. You wouldn't drown in a bog, but you could twist an ankle and get stuck somewhere. It smells bad. This ground here, the whole thing's moving. I'll demonstrate, see if I put the camera on the floor. Let's see if this works. It's obviously thick enough to take my weight. Who knows how deep it is underneath blanket bog.
After a brief scrabble, stumble and squelch back onto the path, Past George was ready to deliver his verdict on the dangerousness of the dreaded Foxtor Mire.
There's just a path through Foxtor Mires, quite easy to follow. A bit soggy in places, but not like dangerous, boggy. I'm presuming I've actually finished. There might be another little stretch to get over this hill actually. But that bit was fine. Definitely not dangerous unless, I guess, you start running around off the path.
And here's the important thing to remember about bogs. They're only dangerous in the way that, say, a cliff face is dangerous. You can avoid them. They don't hunt you across the moor in the moonlight. You'd have to be very, very clumsy and unaware to stumble all the way into a depth of peat that could drown you. Foxtor Mire, certainly, despite its reputation, wasn't much of a challenge, though I've been told that the lesser-known Ray-Barrow Pool and Orne Head are the really dangerous ones. Maybe an adventure for another day.
Look at the size of that hat. Jesus Christ. Think of the size of his head. Enormous hat. Bigfoot. Big head.
The fear of mires, swamps, bogs and marshes, I feel, is similar to the childhood fear of quicksand imprinted on us by cartoons and action movies. It's a negligible threat, but the idea, just the thought, of the slow sinking into sludge is so horrible that we can't shake it. The time you'd have to contemplate your own death as it gradually dragged you under. The final gasp of clean air before the skin of moss closed in over your terrified face. Flailing in the rank peaty soup, you'd hold your breath for as long as you could, before, bursting, you'd have to open your mouth one last time and suck the foul, filthy water into your lungs. Anyway, my adventure wasn't finished. Although I'd enjoyed squelching around in the mire, I hadn't seen everything I'd wanted. I camped out near Foxtor and woke to explore a proper hilltop bog. To do this would mean ascending Crane Hill, where work is underway to actually create more bog environments. You see, years of questionable farming practices, peat cutting, tin mining, and the army literally blowing holes in the place has left Dartmoor's blanket bogs in a less than ideal condition. And when they are in peak condition, they provide a number of bog benefits. The remote acidic environment means that although bogs aren't leaping with life, the species they do support tend to be rare specialists. I was really disappointed with the dearth of nature I'd seen down in Foxtor Mire. No butterflies, dragonflies or wading birds at all. And early signs were that Crane Hill wasn't much better. But then I stumbled upon a clump of these tiny bizarre characters. Sundews.
Oh, look at the size of these sundews.
Because the soil here is so poor in nutrients, sundews have evolved a way to get them elsewhere. They are carnivorous plants. The sticky dew on their little alien tendrils is attractive to midges, and if they land on them, they become stuck before the leaf curls in around them and digests them. Basically, tiny Venus flytraps. Unexpectedly exotic. Very cool. But it's not just a few strange species of plants that make healthy bogs such important habitats. Dartmoor provides almost half of Devon's drinking water, and sphagnum moss effectively filters the rainwater before it reaches our reservoirs, making our drinking water cleaner. On top of this, the action of rain quickly soaking into the moss and only slowly being released means that it massively reduces the risk of flooding. And on top of this, healthy peat bogs store vast amounts of carbon, so could be an important player in the fight against climate change.
They got me surrounded.
Damaged peat, where it has been torn up, dried and exposed like these peat hags, provide none of these benefits. Ugly too. Good name though. It was around this point that I got really tired of trudging over Blanket Bog. Although Dartmoor's mires might not be deadly dangerous, there's a more subtle distress they can inflict. It's hard going on the soft ground, constantly watching your feet. The landscape can be utterly featureless, so it's difficult to navigate. You are exposed to the weather, whether that be sun, wind or rain. Somehow they instill a feeling of both agoraphobia and claustrophobia at once, and it takes mental fortitude to keep carefully plodding when part of your brain is screaming at you to bolt towards the horizon. An act that would risk you getting injured, or at the very least, even more lost and exhausted. So, while it might be difficult to die in a Dartmoor bog, it's quite easy to find yourself in discomfort. An inexperienced walker caught out in this barren and dreary plain, lost with wet feet and panic setting in, could easily find themselves so psychologically distraught that they might actually want to lie down and sink into the peat just to have an end to it. All said and done, I was glad to finally get on the path near Arlesbarrow Mines and head back to civilization.
He's being pursued by a monstrous hound.
I mean, really weak. I mean, he's following the dog for a start. Over to you lot. Have any of you had a worrying bog experience on Dartmoor? I'd like to hear your story in the comments. No, really, I'm not just trying to engage with the algorithm or anything. That actually interests me. Thanks for listening, everyone. See you next time.
Just about the rest of that.